Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Professionals Unplugged. I am your host, Utkarsh. Today we have Ketan with us. Ketan, thank you for joining us back again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on again.
So, in our first episode, we discussed about Ketan's journey as an SVP at Access Info Management, right? So, today our main focus will be on how he landed in US from India, and we are going to cover the path, the difficulties that he has faced during this phase, right? So, Ketan, the ball is in your court now, so you can just start with the
I
basic.
love it. Yeah. So the way that my US sort of journey started was in 2008, and I had an opportunity to visit New York along with a host of my peers at Goldman Sachs. And Goldman had this great program. I don't know if it still exists, probably does, where they would bring in the analyst class globally to their New York headquarters for close to like 2 or 3 months of training. And you can imagine, like, fresh out of undergrad, getting to visit New York City. I still remember, even though this is like now close to like 18, 20 years old. Uh, when our like we took the bus from JFK airport, and it went over the bridge, and as soon as the skyline for New York City came up, it blew my mind. And we dumped our bags in the hotel room after checking in. We went straight to Times Square. That was quite a moment. It's still like one of those core memories that I have. And I spent a lot of time during those 2 or 3 months, and I was like, okay, this is a place, this is ground zero of innovation. I want to be here, close to the place where all of the action happens. And then in 2012 is when I got an opportunity to um, come here for my business school, for my MBA. And then one thing led to the other. I got my internship here. Then I joined full time with Deloitte Consulting. And then over time, I basically planted roots and have settled here. But I would say, like, everybody has sort of immigration hiccups.
Yeah.
And I know, like, again, for your audience, there are a lot of questions around immigration and visas and sponsorships. I'm happy to dive into those in more detail, but this is a little bit about how I got to where I am.
Yeah, so I have few questions on the same, right? So the first time you got from Goldman to the New York office, right? So was it on like tourist visa, or it's like what kind of visa was that? It's like if anyone wants, like,
Yeah, it was the B1, B2, the B1, B2 category. I think it's a business visit and tourist visa combined. I was, of course, I think the B2 is the business equivalent of that, and um, even back then, the rules were pretty stringent. Now, my understanding is that it's very, very tough, and COVID just made matters worse. And there is generally just a trend towards, restricting immigration, which is making matters worse. But even back then, it was quite tough. And props to our trainers at Goldman, because they helped us train for the interview process. They made sure that our documentation was complete. I went to Chennai, I remember, and the Chennai embassy, because I was in Bangalore and the closest embassy is in Chennai, for my interview. And it was all, it was the typical emotions. There is a little bit of apprehension, there is some worry, there is some tension, there is, of course, stress, all of that combined. But it worked out in the end. I think the process is pretty streamlined. It's, I would say, like, not it's meant to catch the not true parts of applications pretty quickly, and just being honest about everything, and then that's the right way to do it, I feel.
right? And once you got back from the tour and you went for the MBA, right? So then you must probably be at student visa, right?
Yes, the second time I went on that F1 student visa. And then you get the sort of the optional practicum training, OPT extension. And then I went to the H1B process, and then one thing led to the other, and that's how, basically, the typical immigrant journey.
Right, because I think the most common thing that we hear in India is like it's very difficult to get H1B, right? And
Yes.
people are saying
Even
like there is a lot of queue and a lot of wait time. especially at this moment, right? So what's your thought on this, or if you can enlighten us on the same?
So I'm not very close to the statistics and the process that is right now. I, of course, keep up with the news and I see how they have increased sort of the application fee. Even back then, I think 2014, 2015 timeframe when I was going through it, it was still very popular and it was all a lottery based system.
Mhm.
Um, the benefit of having sort of a OPT training or CPT was that have you had probably enough time to get a couple of tries in. And because I had gotten a master's degree, I remember there used to be a separate queue for that. But it was still lottery based system, and like there were always more applications than slots. Um, there was a little bit of luck that I had when the first time I didn't make it, and then it was stressful, of course. But the next time I made it, but the reality is that there were folks in our cohort in business school who were with us who didn't get through the first round. Right? It's a lottery system. There was a tiny sort of percentage who didn't get through a second round, and there are mechanisms by which you can do, like, there are other amazing places around the world where there is a lot of innovation happening and you could really work on some with some cool companies. And there were those routes that folks took. In a nutshell, what I want to say is, like, yes, it's a tough process, but if somebody is hardworking and they don't give up, they keep persevering, they will be able to find a way. Like, it may not um, be the US, although if somebody is really interested in coming here, then yes, but there are always second tries, third tries. You can always continue to do that as well.
Yeah, I guess mostly in the tech world, there is always an American dream, like that the engineers, or I can say
Yes.
the business people carry, right? And they always want to work either from the Wall Street or from the New York or the Bay Area, right? So
Yes.
nowadays,
Yes, I mean, it's
yeah,
personal. Just to finish, it's a personal calculus. Everybody's calculus is a little different. But what I would say is, like, for most people who are aspiring to that American dream, is, I would say, is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Have a plan B, have a plan C. That is the smart approach. Hedging. We talk about hedging risk, right? Always hedge risk, so to say.
yeah. So what's one advice that you like to share? I think you already shared one for the newcomers, right? But if say someone wants to pursue their dreams in the States, right, and they're trying again and again, but do you think there is any other path as well apart from H1B that people can come and work, maybe from a scholarship or something like that you tried
So
to
the
explain?
L1 is pretty popular. Like, that was something that I was considering as well. So the L1 is for global companies that have US presence and then at least some presence outside. And, if folks who are interested in the tech industry, for instance, or startups, um, there is hardly like, I would say, financial services, consulting, there is hardly a company that doesn't have that presence. Like, I could probably have 20 companies in every sector that have that have a US presence and an India presence. So the L1 continues to be, I feel like, a good plan B, where you start in the India office of an organization and then you have the L1 sponsorship after having done, I think it's like 12 months. You need at least 12 months or something. And then you could do an internal transfer. I have friends and I have uh, colleagues who have done that. So that remains popular.
And what was the biggest hiccup for you in this entire process? Was there any point where you thought like maybe this is not working?
There were many points like that, and any, like, literally any uh, person who has done this journey from India or from an international location to the US, everybody has stories. Like, everybody has what I call immigration horror stories, where they got stuck in India to while they were going through the process of getting, like, their extension done on their H1B, or their OPT expired and they don't have their employment documentation secured. So I had a couple of stories like that. I think my worst one was where I think this was when I was working at Deloitte, and I had some lapse in my immigration status, and but that lapse was supposed to be overcome within. There is supposed to be this document called an employment authorization document or an EAD, and you typically get that within 90 days. And I had done all of the paperwork to make sure that I had enough before the lapse in my immigration status began for me to get that EAD. And guess what? I was tracking it very closely, and it did not arrive on time. And obviously, as that deadline was coming closer, I was freaking out, and I had to work with my leaders in my organization. It went all the way to the general counsel's level within Deloitte, and there were true honestly there was no sort of there is no recourse, like there's and so the day arrived and I did not have the right status, so I had to actually turn in all of my stuff. Like I had to go on an unpaid leave of absence, not knowing when I would be able to come back. um, Basically it was effectively like a resignation, um, with the hope that if I got that soon enough, then I can just pick up where I left off. But if it didn't happen within a certain time frame, then I would be like out of luck. Thankfully, it happened in that time, but there was some other things like that document got shipped to the wrong address, and I had to chase it, and all sorts of stuff, drama, so to say, happened. But it worked out in the end. Like I think like it will work out. That's my advice to folks is like there will be challenges, but keep your head high and you work through those. It will, if as long as you are hardworking, you are honest, and you continue to persevere, things will work out.
And is your family also moved with you to the States?
I don't have family here. I have our parents continue to visit, and this is the other thing which is a challenge for most um, children who we immigrate. And I think in my last podcast I mentioned that we underestimate the amount of effort that is required, and we should give ourselves credit for, and we should give our parents and our families credit for being supportive, but then also coming with us on this journey and taking the leap of faith with us. So I don't have my parents with me here. They are back in India. Same with my spouse's parents. I have some couple of siblings here in the US, but that creates a conundrum for us. Is like we do want to be close to our parents as they age, but we don't think about this when we are in that focused mindset of building a career or planting roots here. And as time goes by, those things start to matter more as well. So some of us will move back after a while. There are some who continue to have this type of engagement, children in the US, parents in India, but I don't have family here. But yeah, so I think that's a good point that I wanted to say, like consider that as well. Like that should be an important aspect. It is probably not, but that should be an important aspect in your calculus, an important factor in the calculus of where you want to be long term.
Yeah, because few of my relatives, they are in US and they got their parents in the US, but they were unable to cope up with the culture that they have in the States, and that's because it's completely opposite of what we have in India, right? So sometimes this questions also sparks in anyone who wants to move, like especially for family people, right? If their parents or their other members will be able to live the life that they want to live over there or not, right?
Yeah,
That's
and
exactly.
that becomes really important as parents grow older. um, that becomes really important, having a comfort zone, having a cultural connect, having things to do that you can seep yourself in with joy, is important. And we don't consider that, and I will urge everybody to consider that as well.
Um, and in the last few years, we thought like we have heard a lot of news where it was said like a lot of Indians or Asians are getting out of job because of some changes in the policies of government or those stuff. So have you also seen that thing?
So again, I think yes. So policies keep changing as the government changes. The policies will change. It's a given. We should assume that what's the policy today is not a line in the sand. Don't take anything for granted. All sorts of weird stuff has happened over the past 6 to 8 years, I would say, and that's why it is important to hedge your bets. Um, Evaluate your situation every few years. Identify where you are and where you want to be in like 2 years, 5 years. Take the same approach that you would take to any program at work. Like we do projects at work, and we are expected to have roadmaps or timelines and horizons and end goals. That same template we can apply to our personal sort of journey as well, I feel, and we should assume. I don't think I I don't know or recall where I was explicitly impacted by any policy. Um, but I know of cases again in my family, um, with my friends. I think my sister was impacted back in the day. There was this policy where she was on an H4 dependent visa, and they overnight the government came out with a policy saying H4 visa holders are not allowed to work, and so she had to go on leave as well. Like, so all of us have those sort of stories where we have been impacted overnight. I would feel like government to be more sensitive to those, but again, I'm not in the government, so I can't. But I feel like a just immigration system um, would would be a win-win situation where we can do something about um, encouraging legal immigration more and making sure that we can curb illegal immigration more. And that's a balanced approach to that situation. Level-headed. Unfortunately, I know these aren't level-headed times. It feels
Right.
so.
So is it like once you have H1B, then everything is good, or something else is also required from your end?
Uh, Again, I'm not very close to the whole H1B system any longer, but I feel like we should look at it as just one rung of the ladder. It's great, the first step is somebody deciding that this is the dream that they want to pursue, and this is the place where they want to be for short to medium or long term. The second is arriving here, right? The third is going through that sort of H1B journey. But again, it's just one rung, I feel, of the ladder. There is more to it than that. There's always something else to chase. Like there is uh, H1B extension, there is the green card route, there is citizenship, and there are people who are citizens and then they are deciding to move back or move somewhere else. I feel like that journey never stops. And again, it's like, but if somebody is going through the H1B, if you have secured the H1B, a large part of that equation is solved, like at least for the near term. Yes, that should give you confidence to start feeling that you could be here long term, like, and you can start taking some decisions like that, planting roots. Maybe you want to buy a car, or maybe you want to buy a house, or uh, get married, have kids. What of that? Those big milestones in life can start to manifest, provided you have that certainty, and H1B is that step that provides you with that certainty, at least in the short term.
Right. Because the one question that is arising in my mind is like, do you always have a plan B? Like, suppose anything changes. So is it like you always live with that one thought, like there can be a change any day and we might
I
not.
personally do. That is just who I am as a person. Like, I feel like planning, like I'm big on planning. Like, that is just, I enjoy planning. I enjoy what I call risk modeling, and then, trying to mitigate those risks. But there is like limits to it, right? And like everybody has their own limits. There are people who like to live freely. They feel like, I want to live my life day to day. I wake up, every day is a new day. Why do I have to worry about uh, what's in the future? That's fine. There is the again, like, there is no, like, I don't know what the right answer is.
The question is
But
for
I can
you.
just tell you what I personally do, and which is I try. I may be a little bit more on the planning and de-risking side.
That's great. So, any other point that you think we should cover? Or I guess most of the things we have covered.
Yeah, I would say, like, the times have changed. My sort of one advice to young folks listening to this or thinking about uh, making America or realizing the American dream is that, yes, it continues to be a really powerful motivator, and by many accounts, this continues to be the place to be if you are to be in certain industries, like for AI. Like, you want to be here. If you are interested in AI, you want to make a career, America is the place. Technology, big tech, data analytics, to some extent biotech, medicine, even law. So I would say that for many, across many dimensions and many domains, it continues to be a very powerful, sort of attractive force. But having said that, it's not the end game. Like, it's not, there are many more opportunities out there. We should not beat ourselves up on if we can't achieve that. There are many more. We can be smart about it, and there is more to life than that. It's the same thing. Like, don't go crazy with your engineering or medicine entrance exam. There's more to life after that. Honestly, now that I look back, and we were given like this is it. It's a good mental model to be in when you are pursuing a dream, but the best mental model is to know, be aware of it, that yes, I am laser focused, and that this is what I want to achieve. So I'm laser focused on that, like maybe a Virat Kohli is, or a Tiger Woods is when he's playing golf. But knowing that this is not the end, like, we forget that boundary, and there is a boundary. There should be an on and off switch that we need to have, that this is not the end game. So the same advice, there is more to life than just this.
Great. I think that's the best thing to end this podcast. Thank you so much, Ketan, for sharing your insights. I hope it will be pretty helpful for anyone who wants to move to US. And thanks a lot.
Absolutely, thank you so much for having me on again. Really enjoyed the talk.
Thanks.
Take care.